Hey, I want to welcome everybody to the February Open Space Committee meeting. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I think we have a full agenda tonight, and we're going to try and go through some of the routine stuff kind of quickly. So we'll begin by the approval of the prior minutes. Each of you have a copy of the minutes that was prepared by Pat. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the minutes as submitted by Pat? If not, make a motion to be approved.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any revisions to the agenda that's been submitted?
A slight addition to discuss the property off of the ferry trail.
Okay. We'll do that at the public comments then. Okay. Any other changes, comments? If not, we'll get started with the liaison reports from the township. Carl, anything new to report?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. I had an opportunity to meet with Cliff and with Township Manager Dale Ream regarding several pieces of purchase. We've asked Dale to provide us with rough estimates as to what their approximate values would be. Confident that Cliff's going to want to have a special meeting where we can talk about that in a study session. And properties are all over the island. I'm not going to identify them, but I do think there are some interesting possibilities that we could move forward on. And I think the new board would look favorably on perhaps going ahead and partnering with the Conservancy about buying some property with the funds that we have.
Good. Anything else, Carl?
No, sir, that's it.
Thank you. Bert, anything from the Conservancy?
The Conservancy has a program coming up on Sunday. I'll walk over and put it on the screen. So we are offering Winterways of the Bay this Sunday at 1 p.m. at the Gibraltar Bay unit of the Refuge on East River. Natalie Seifer is a naturalist who grew up on Grosse Ile. She's a wonderful, talented person, and we'll be talking about how winter affects the plants and animals of the region. So we're hoping that everyone can come out and let Natalie know. It's going to be a great event. It up for a little while?
Sure. Thanks, Bert. Leah, anything to report as far as the Recreation Commission is concerned?
Yep, the minutes were 5 pages long, but I won't do the whole thing for you, okay? We weren't televised, so I felt I needed to be as accurate as I could for the one absent person, so... but anyway, basically, Dale Ream has been acting as Recreation Director while we're searching for another. We introduced our 2 new student liaisons, and I wish the community could have seen them in action. It's Alicia Bonder and Libby Frucci, a name that you guys are familiar with. And the 2 of them are going to share it. They're both on the student council. They're both very active in diverse activities, so we feel like we have a really good student liaison program going. Not that we've always had good ones in the past too, but these 2 girls are particularly exciting, I think. The deadline for the applications for the Community Rec Director was January 30th, and I have to admit I was running around the rain all day today, and I didn't have a chance to call Dale to see how the 3 officers, Ann and Dale and either the police chief or the fire chief are the ones doing the interviewing and so forth. We are working with the park consultants from Wade Trim to look at the recreation areas on the airport, and they're going to draw up some preliminary plans for us to look at about how we can get collaboration among the groups that work there and facilities, such as toilets and a building where you can buy food, etc. Everything is pretty bedded down for the winter. Of course, we have had, 5 days of sunshine and 37-degree weather, so all of those who are looking forward to the skating rink, we did get a good few days in, but not much since then. And, of course, the maintenance building is already is up and in good shape. We continue to do a lot of repair work around the Centennial Farm and update things and so forth at the marina and the golf area and so forth. We're already starting to recruit tenants for the marina and looking at some of the ways we might want to change collecting that. I'm sure, we have a new bus coming too, so that should be helpful to senior citizens and others on the island. So I'm not going to go any much unless you have a specific question that you'd like me to expand on. I'll stop there.
No, that'll be fine. Just keep us appraised of the search that you're conducting for the new rec director, and when he or she is announced, let us know.
Will do. I understand we had a number of applications. So,
thank you very much, Leah.
You're welcome.
Substituting for, Mitch Lewis could not be here tonight. He has other commitments, so there'll be no report for the Grosse Ile schools, but I am very anxious to hear some word about the interaction that's going to be taking place between the Grosse Ile schools and the open space program as it relates to trail usage and our interpretive trails. Pat, unless you have some comments on it. Okay, all right, thank you. Beautification Commission, Pam could not be here tonight, so Terry, could you give us a short report? Yeah, you can, sure. Thank you.
Art Kester is recovering from health issues at Riverview. Art and Claire would appreciate any prayers.
By all means, Art was a long-standing member of our committee, and we miss him.
Is that located? Terrace?
Rivergate Terrace? I'm not sure. I haven't been there yet. I saw him when he was at the hospital. He didn't look great, but he's slowly recovering. He can almost walk now. As far as IBC, we had our February meeting and we covered a few things. We've taken down the Christmas decorations from the four corners and put up new entrance signs. We debated for years. It says maintained by IBC, small signs. The bill for the new sprinkler system that was installed in the four corners came in, and it was much higher than we expected, which put us over budget quite a bit for our 16-17 calendar year. Some members had thought the township had agreed to cover the cost, but I guess that was a misunderstanding. And apparently now they will cover the deficit. Another reason it was a little higher was the bill came to us also included the garden club's portion in the southeast corner.
All four corners?
Yes, they did all four corners. Yes.
This time?
Yep.
Up in there before, right?
There was water, but it wasn't hooked up to a system, a sprinkler system, so we had to haul hoses around
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
back and forth, and we had a lockbox to keep people from stealing the stuff and trying to keep it. Didn't do a very good job, but
So you got sprinklers now?
so we have sprinklers here. I actually wanted a drip system, but I got outvoted, so it's an overhead spray system. We struggle with that kind of system at the rec center, at the butterfly garden, trying to get all the plants as they grow higher, and as the wind blows, it's hard to get it right. But we'll do the best we can. It's certainly an improvement over hauling hoses around.
Okay, yeah, right.
At the meeting in February, we had a lot of discussion about the Beautification Committee of Southeastern Michigan, BCSEM, which our committee had tentatively volunteered to host for the springtime event, which is typically 75 to 100 folks which come. We hadn't done it for maybe 10 years. And it's a fairly involved requirements. Our Plan A, Pam had gotten some agreement from the authorities at the Gibraltar Education Center to host it there near the Humbug Marsh. But today, we found out, just like a lot of people had heard, it's not open until fall. So our backup plan was to go to the Groseville Country Club, and we have some agreements from those folks that they would let us host it. But we're not sure if we can cater the whole affair. There's a requirement of the BCSEM that it can't be over $15 per person. That includes all the mailings, all the centerpieces, all the other things that go out in addition to the food. So we're going to check into that next. We have a subcommittee to do that. Pam's hoping if we do it there, we could spend some time touring Groseville, potentially taking people around, seeing the open spaces, the gardens, and a lot of the attractions on the island. But we've just really started, and we're kind of getting nervous about it's coming up in June, which we have to have the mailings out a month ahead of time, 2 months ahead of time, so we can get the reservations back a month ahead of time. So our chairman kind of thinks we better push it back till fall. I guess that'd be Plan C. It would just be push it back until the fall meeting. Just say we can't, the Groseville can't host it in spring, but we could maybe in fall.
And you could use Groseville Country Club, right? You use the country club.
Yeah, it would be open, but they said they have room for us on the date that we have. It's a Thursday, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, that's the extent of my report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Terry. Appreciate it. Okay. Instead of the financial report, what I'd like to do is maybe, first of all, Carl, I think this is what he's talking about. I found it. What I'd like to do now is to Carl's comment about a study session to look at some properties. I'd like to schedule a date right now to do that. When would be convenient? I'd like to have all the committee members. This would be restricted to committee members only, in a closed session to discuss these properties. What dates would be agreeable? You have a calendar, Bert? Or you're reaching for yours, right? Yeah. Would you want it by before the end of the month?
We're all retired, but how do we, could I make there or not on a certain day?
Well, I'm looking for...
One of us still works, Woody.
I said we're all retired.
Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. Why don't we just schedule, you want to schedule a week? And then I'll send out an email to all committee members to say what dates would be agreeable to you.
The only nights I'm not available next week are Monday and Tuesday.
Okay. I will send out an email to all the committee members stating we're going to have a study session, and I would think it would be here in the evening would be best. And I'll put down the dates that you're available, and put down as many dates as you can if you're going to be available for 2 or 3, but I'll pick the date where the greatest number of people can attend.
6 of us here right now. Why don't we get it done now? There's 6 of us here now. Right. Why don't we just pick it?
If Wednesday the 15th or the 16th work, they both work for me.
15th of February?
Good for me.
Not good for you?
Parties to go to.
About 15th or 16th? What dates are you available?
I'm open.
Okay.
What
All
time?
right. You want to settle it for the 15th of February? February 15th? At what time? 7 o'clock?
That's good.
Okay. And it'll be here, and it'll probably be in the conference room next door.
Okay.
Easy. Good idea.
Okay. Now we'd like to open up the floor for public comments, and I think, Mrs. Helby, you had a comment, and
Thank you and good evening. Pat Selby, 8525 Sherwood, also here with my husband, Ron Broush. I did want to come and ask the Open Space Committee to look into a situation that involves Ferry Trail. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with Ferry Trail, I don't know how well folks from the southern half of the island know it, but the northern half, it's kind of central and key to so many of us. It's a fabulous walking, biking, running trail that goes from the south end of Gage Road to the north end of Lowry and connects to a lot of neighborhoods to Ferry and makes it easy for some of us to walk down to Macomb. It's just a wonderful central place for us, and most of the trail goes through township-owned property. But the south end of it, and I don't know what length of it, it's kind of generally known that it goes through private property. There was a sign posted over the last year that nearby was a for sale by owner sign, and then probably late summer, early fall, there were stakes. Clearly it had been surveyed. Some of the stakes were on the east side of the trail, indicating that the trail itself very well may be on the private property that was sold. And so the reason I'm coming today, and I've been meaning to come to the township or come to the committee, is to say I'd really like to see it investigated and determine if we can find, if the committee or the township can determine who owns the property, what their plans are for it, do they intend to permit continued access to the trail? If they don't, to have the township and through the committee investigate whether easement would be possible. So when you're negotiating prices for possible purchases, please save some money for an easement potentially, or whether or not there's other alternatives where the trail can be redirected from the open space area, keep the major part of the trail intact, but maybe another way to connect it to Ferry. Because I think if you turn that into a dead-end trail, it just won't serve the community well, and I don't think it'll serve the new property owner well. So I'm just asking you to investigate the situation. So thank you.
let me answer.
I'm sorry?
We are going to do it.
Okay.
And Bert has, can I put you on the spot, Bert? Bert is going to take a look at it. Bert, if you want me to go with you, I would be happy to do that. You
I don't know,
pick a
Pat, do you
time.
want to point that out? Maybe you and I can take a walk over there and at least start
we would
exploring
enjoy
it.
that.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time there, and I was going to say, if there's any way I can help with the investigation, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay, fine. We appreciate your help on this.
We'll do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any comments?
Why don't we just buy the damn thing?
Well, I think it's too late now. It's been sold.
We should have done it before, and we don't have to play this game.
Well, anyways, all right, we'll take a look at it. All right, we do have a number of action items. First of all, we have to, by middle of next week, submit our annual report. And I have, if you will look in your package, I have a draft of the annual report for February 2017. It's a draft. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at it. If there are any changes, additions, or deletions, please let me know so that I can update it and get it back to you for final approval so I can get it in by the deadline. First of all, let's start the status of the objectives. Are there any, what I've done here is stated the objectives that we originally prepared for the year 2016-2017, and then I put a note whether they've been achieved or not achieved. Are there any changes or deletions or revisions of any kind? Are there any other accomplishments that we made which were not listed in the objectives which we may want to list?
On that Albemarle open space, are we going to have phase 1 and phase 2 before we decide if we're going to buy it?
Well, we're going to decide on the Albemarle.
Yeah.
That's going to be the next item. That's the next item on the agenda. In other words, what I've you're skipping ahead a little bit, buddy. But what I've got down here is the objective for 26, 17, and 18 is to address the issue of the Albemarle Township property. So we're going to be talking about that later on.
Right.
Okay.
I'm not sure about this purchase additional open space property that is part of the 110 acres of privately owned land, obtain a concise position from the township board. That seems like you're...
Where's that located?
All over. Let me read the intent. We want to purchase, there's about 110 acres of privately owned land on Grosse Ile at the present time. We wanted to purchase at least some of that property last year, and we were not unable to do that, so I put not achieved. And this time what we're looking for is the township's position on property acquisition has not been resolved. I don't know what their position is at the present time. Now, do we want to reword this? Do we want to change it?
Well, you're saying that property was...
No.
No, what he's saying is that there's 110 areas available that we would want to consider to look at that meets our criteria. And we would like to buy something within that package.
Okay, so you...
Not 110 acres.
No, I know that.
No,
But
okay.
we have that piece of property that goes, as part of it's open space, part of it's owned by, and it was just rebought by somebody else. Why don't we see if we can rebuy that one strip of land so we can get out of this nit-nat thing we're in now, going back and forth?
Well, that's what we're going to do, Woody.
That's why we're having the meeting
That's why we're having the
on the
meeting.
15th.
That's why Bert and Pat are going to go out and investigate it, find out what we have, what we don't have, what the status of all that property is, to see what action we should take to protect that trail. That's what Bert and Pat Selby are going to do.
Okay.
All right, that's a piece of it. I would maybe change the wording, obtain a concise position from the township board. That seems kind of provocative because of our...
Why don't we just leave it off then?
Yeah.
Just take it off. Okay. Upgrade the wildlife sanctuary. We achieved that with flying colors.
I know. Congrats to Pat on that.
Absolutely. And expand the wildlife sanctuary educational concept. Pat?
Kudos again to Pat for that.
Is there anything else that we should add as things that we've achieved last year?
Or an objective, do we want to add dealing with vandalism? Because I think that's been something that we're confronting, and Patty, you've experienced.
Well, I met last week with the police chief, and when we can bring it up now, or we can wait till we get to the end when you go around and ask us. But we had about an hour's long meeting on that, and I feel very positive from what resulted from that.
Well, we can very easily put that as one of our objectives.
Sure.
Establish a program to curtail vandalism, something to that effect.
Something, yeah.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll rewrite this, and then I'll send it back for all of you to review and get back with me, say by mid-February, so that I can get it into the township. All right, the objectives for 2017 and 18, I had continue the dump the junk program, and the wood cutting programs. Complete
More people.
investigation of the possibility of preparing and the issues relating to the official trail for the Albemarle open space area. Purchase additional open space property as part of the 110 acres privately owned. Now that we're talking about it, I would maybe just eliminate the 110 acres and just put down additional private property. Okay?
Be better.
That's better.
Okay. Updates the open space information for the Grosse Ile via the Trenton Tribune. I think, thinking about that, I think I might want to just, that's part of the program to inform the residents about the open space program and some of the issues that we're facing in the Trenton Tribune, as we did with the Grosse Ile camera, the old camera a couple of years ago.
Should we add in there that we're going to participate in the Island Fest again, or whatever that is we were in? Is that going to be an ongoing objective?
It can be.
May
Yeah.
as well.
Okay. Participate
What's
in
it cost, $50 or what's it cost?
50.
Yeah.
We could go in with Bert's organization, and we don't have to be, everybody's got to be at the same.
That's what we did last
That's what
time.
we did
I think
last
it
year.
worked out very well.
Yeah, it worked out
Are you
better.
agreeable?
Yeah, it was a joint effort. And expand the open space educational concept to involve the Grosse Ile schools. I think we should make a concerted effort to make them, get them to a situation where they would want to come out and maybe tour the trails as part of their nature programs. Are there any other objectives? Okay. I'll add the two. I'll expand the, as far as the vandalism issue is concerned, and then participate in Island Fest.
Should continuing to participate in the liaison program with other groups be a part of the objective, or is that just assumed?
That's assumed.
Okay, just double checking.
It is, yeah. All right, what I'll do is I will revise the annual report, and I'll get it back. I'll get it out to you this week, and if you could respond as quickly as possible with yeas or nays, and then I can submit it to the township. The next item is the financial report. If you turn the page, here's a draft of the proposed budget for next year. The budget that we had established last year was $57,200, and then I reported the actual spent to date was $24,560. A best guess, we're going to spend another $6,000 between now and March, and for a total of about $31,000, in which will be about $26,000 favorable. The last column is the proposed budget. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. Are there any, I'd like to put this in with the annual report. Are there any changes, additions, deletions, or anything that I've missed?
I have a question.
Yes.
The new tree and plantings, that has not, since I've been on the committee, happened. It has not been part of the concept we've had for trail maintenance. Does that mean that we are expanding our maintenance on the trails, or what is meant by that line?
Well, that's kind of like, it's been on for a number of years, Pat, and you're absolutely right. We have not entered into any programs where we are planting new trees, but it's, I think it's something that a lot of us think maybe we should do, but we just haven't gotten around to it.
We had started writing a maintenance plan. Maybe in the objectives, I hate to go back to that, but maybe in the objectives we should try to get a maintenance plan written this year so that we could then better budget for the approach we're going to use on the trails.
Okay. I think we had a draft of one.
We have a draft of one, yes.
That's right. So you want to add to the...
Leave the line item in the budget, but go back to the objectives and develop a open space maintenance plan.
Okay.
Well, there are companies that can do an inventory of a municipality's trees and record the health, and then you have a program that then going forward you can keep track.
That's right.
And, I know some communities have gotten grants to do that, so maybe that's something that we should look into.
We spoke when we were having the trees marked, when we had the volunteer foresters, Michigan volunteer foresters. They mentioned that we may want to have a maintenance plan and that they would work with us and they would help us get a grant if we wanted to pursue that. They've been very supportive in the past of helping us with our Red Oak program, and I think they would be a very cost-effective group to work with.
I think that would be worthwhile, if we did it all of a piece instead of
Right.
just starting with maintenance here.
Well, now just take, for example, the dead trees we were talking about by the fire station. If all those trees get taken out, then maybe we would want to plant some new ones. So we want to keep that line item in, but I think we need to have sort of some kind of a maintenance plan that includes those kind of issues. And God forbid if we had a disease hit our trees, then we would definitely need to do more plantings. So.
All right, I'll add that to the annual report, and we'll leave that line item in.
The only other question I have on your budget
Should it
line
be
items.
increased or decreased? Not decreased.
No, leave it as,
Yeah.
but just put in the maintenance plan how we would do something and why we would do it.
Okay.
Okay. What kind of equipment are we planning on purchasing?
Oh, that was a placeholder that we had for last year. We didn't know whether we were going to buy any equipment or not, but I had no definite plans. I just put in some money for buying some equipment should the need arise.
Okay.
Do you have an idea what you were going to buy?
I have absolutely no idea whatsoever, Woody.
Okay.
It was just a placeholder
All right.
for some equipment that I put in.
Well, I thought we had talked about whether we were going to buy equipment or just rely on contractors, and decided that with maintenance and storage it was more cost-effective to rely on the equipment provided by our contractors. But I think it's not a bad idea to have something just in case.
What if we just put equipment and/or
Purchase land lease.
equipment purchase / rent?
Good.
That way we could use it either way.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'll make those changes and I'll get them out to you, but please, all I ask is get back to me quickly and consensus either on the changes that we've made or else if you have some additional ideas so I can get it to the township by the deadline. Any other comments as far as the financial documents concerned? If not, to summarize, what I'll do is I'll changes for equipment purchase and rent. Please assure that the line items in here are flexible. If we've always spent less than what we projected to spend, but there's times when one line item is under and the other line item is over. So I don't usually get excited about that. Okay, the next item is the Albemarle Meadows Trail issue. There has been I want to have a discussion about this in terms of everybody's input on the Albemarle Meadows issue. I have in back some emails that have been floating back and forth. Dale Ream wrote a memo, and he indicated that there would be some additional costs of approximately $10,000 if we wanted to do a survey, plus some additional costs. And I just want to start off with a general discussion about the Albemarle Meadows. And I know, Darrell, this has been near and dear to your heart, so why don't you start off so we can talk about it and hopefully try to have some direction on this. Is this going to be a trail, or is it just going to be a survey, or what is it? What are we going to do?
I propose that we get in there with a bobcat, and right now you have to go through private property to get in. And it's all overgrown with brush and trees and, and I propose that we just go in there with a bobcat and make not a proposed trail, but a trail along the water and so on. Pick a point of entry and go from there.
Away you go.
And that way you can inspect the property. Right now we can't even inspect the property. You can't get anybody in there to survey it. There's too much brush and trees in the way.
So what you want to do, you want to put in some sort of an area where somebody could go in there and look at it and see what we have.
See what we have.
Okay. Lenny, any comments? I'm going to start right down the aisle here. Right.
I don't disagree. It needs to be opened up to where you can actually see what you have. And right now access is difficult, if not impossible, to get to. So to get in there to do anything to it, you need an access point to go do that and have sure footing for a survey. We don't know what's underneath there, but we should do a survey and have a look and see what the potential is, what the requirements are for any kind of top coat or sealant to create a trail. It's a beautiful area.
Bird?
Well, I don't know if we have the budget to do that. And I will say that right across the street is the refuge with trails that are now open 365 days a year. So I'm not sure if that's the highest priority for open space.
Pat?
I think that is a nice to have. I think it is going to be a very costly project. We have no additional funds coming in. We're trying to manage our maintenance funds to last as long as possible. We just had a major expense on Manchester Woods. If we could do what Darrell was proposing, then the next step would have to be a $10,000 fee to pursue it. And I don't think we have $10,000 to put out for that. Now, we might be able to get a grant to support us doing that. It's a beautiful piece of property that a lot of money was spent on. I appreciate that we're trying to utilize it and do something with it, but I think, as Darrell said, we don't want to put a lot of money in it, but we just want to know what we're working with. So I could agree to look at it, but then before we decided to go further, we would have to seriously see where the funding would come from, because I don't think we could take it out of our current maintenance. We'd have to try and get a grant or something.
Woody, you have any comments?
Yeah, if we're gonna get into it, we're gonna have to drill and sample the land, not just the top part, the underneath part where all the barrels are. And that's gonna cost some money. We have that kind of money, go for it. But I'm not voting for it until we have a survey, drilling survey, not a on top of land survey.
Carl?
The federal government and the state of Michigan have long had environmental cleanup laws as to what you can and cannot do with existing areas that may have contamination. As an example, if you had a gasoline station at one point, or you bought property within a certain distance of a gas station, banks and other institutions would require that you do what's known as a phase one analysis. And a phase one essentially requires that you do your due diligence and see if there's a possibility that there could be contamination there. My understanding from reading the emails and from speaking with Dale Ream is that we all know that that was a township dump at one point, and it certainly sits very, very close to the sites where the former part of the Nike base was. Based on that, I am convinced, having done some work in this area, environmental cleanup, that you would have to engage in a phase two analysis. Phase two means you go in and you do the boring, you do the test sampling, and whether or not you do any clear cutting or do anything with that property, it strikes me that the very first thing that you would want to do would be to have a consultant tell you, based upon information that is accurate and presented to them, so that they could tell you how many samplings they would have to take and where they're doing, where those samples would be required. I am confident if you were to go in there without having that work done and attempt to do anything with building a trail or moving any equipment in there, you may very well be placing the township in a position of having to do cleanup with something that is not disturbed and therefore not a problem right now. If, as an example, you were to go in there with a bobcat, depending upon the time of year, and you were to, this would be probably a bad time of year to do it with all the rain that we've had, you may very well be stirring up some of those things that, if they are left capped, are not a problem. It is a beautiful piece of property. It's also above a landfill. Bert, in her response to the email question about comparison with Mount Trashmore, was spot on. You have caps of clay underneath, you have caps of clay over it, because clay is fairly impervious. The worst thing that you could do would be to go in there, get stuck, need to have some equipment pull you out, or you do a lot of disturbance without having done the phase two analysis. My concern is that if you were to go ahead and do that, you would be exposing the township to potential liability, not going in the direction you want with a trail, and perhaps doing more damage to the proposal than you are doing good. Certainly going in and cutting some of the brush, and that would be laudable, but is that something that would be required by the environmental consultant? If he or she looks at it and says, well, guys, thanks for cleaning this area up, but you really didn't need to do it because there's nothing you can do here. My samples say that this is contaminated with all different kinds of chemicals and different kinds of metals. I don't know that there would be heavy metals there, but you are on a navigable body of water. I would suggest whatever you do with that, you may need permits to do even trails because of the nature of that. I'm not an expert, but I know that I would ask a consultant, as Dale Ream has suggested. Township manager has plenty of experience with this. When he says that $5,000 for a plan to hire an environmental consultant and look at a formal due care plan for the program, makes all the sense in the world. I am reluctant. In the test that I use is, would I recommend this to a client? Would I recommend this to a neighbor or family member or friend? And I would not recommend to this commission or to the citizens of Grosse Ile to go in there and do anything until you've had a serious study done that tells you what kind of chemicals and what kind of metals are in the ground. And that's a big problem. It's a beautiful piece of property, but I like my 10 toes, and I don't like shooting any of them. And I think that would be a potential. That would be a problem, and I think that it could be a very big problem for the township to go in there and start doing that. So respectfully, I'd like to see it done. But if you're going to do anything, it's not about just putting wood chips down, going in with a wheelbarrow and a chainsaw and doing more than that. You have to look at what you're getting into. Do you want to put money into something without doing a study? And I think respectfully the answer to that should be no, do the study first. And if the study comes back and says you have areas in there that you can use, that answers Daryl's question. But if the study comes back and says this whole thing is just a toxic problem and you should go nowhere with it, then that's the answer to Bert and Pat's question. And Woody's.
So I guess
Cliff, we all received this preliminary environmental investigation on the former township landfill, January 5th, 2006.
Right.
I met with Dale Ream and I said, is this still a viable report? Has another report been done, or are we bound to follow what we found out in this report? Dale told me that no other report has been done, and that what was found in the 2006 report holds until another report has been generated. Based on this report, it completely concurs with what Kurt says. Yeah. And it points out where.
I think Daryl, I think you have
that.
Yeah, I gave you a copy.
I made copies for everybody and distributed them a year or two ago.
Okay. Well, it appears at this point in time that if we would go in there with some sort of a hedgehog or something like that, we'd be opening up ourselves to some serious problems. Correct?
I would say two things. Number one, you may be opening the township up to some liability issues. Number one.
Yeah.
And number two, that may be not just a self-destructive act, but it may be a futile act because no good will come of it. And in fact, if you open it up and it becomes an attractive nuisance to other people that are now interested in going back there, you have a problem. And there's a statement in Mr. Ream's email about a fence and having to take care of that. That is a very expensive proposition if you get into a cleanup. A very expensive proposition. And if there is consideration about disturbing that, and you boil some stuff to the surface and it leaks out into the bay, the swamp area, I shudder to think where that goes. But if you have the analysis done and it tells you that there are problems there, the question is, what is the remediation? And the remediation process takes you through phase 2 and into phase 3, where you have to have soil removed, either burned or removed, depending upon the extent of the environmental cleanup. You have to receipt for it at landfills. You pay by the yard when you remove stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you have to put in some kind of a bulkhead along the water area, That's worst-case scenario to keep the material from leaching into it. But by and large, you'll find that the proposals that come forward now require a lot of permitting and a lot of assessment. And I would be very loath to come near that with a 10-foot pole without having a consultant at a minimum tell you what you can and cannot do.
Well, does this report answer that question?
Yes. It tells you what's in there in the soil. It tells you what areas you should not develop.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very comprehensive report. And they did do boring down into the soil, so they found different stuff that you don't want to have in it.
Yeah, right.
But the thing is, I don't think our charter and our mission is to refurbish the open spaces. I reread all the stuff that we have in our directives, and it says to maintain the natural site. You might push it and say, well, we want to return it to the natural site. But I think that would be sort of stretching what our mission is, especially when it's so costly.
I think. Am I hearing?
Well, Cliff, could I make a comment?
Yes.
I've been thinking about this. Yeah, we did our Catherine and Bogart thing through there. But I've been thinking about this in that it is so close to the water, and I appreciate that mud is better than sand in terms of protecting. And I don't know what they did, however many years ago, to make that a dump that was going to be ecologically responsible. But I think from a broader point of view, not just here as a recreation site, but from the township's point of view, and there are people living right around there, and now we're talking about water, the underground water, fresh water piece, that it maybe is in the best interest of the township to be taking a look at that as a preventive measure, not for development, just to make sure there's nothing going on that's leaking that we don't know about, that's already leaking out of there. That's my concern. It's a bigger concern than what you guys have. I mean, if I were living there and next to a dump, I guess I'd be super concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Right. I mean, Dale says, I'm recommending that at a minimum we work with an environmental consultant and prepare a formal due care plan for this property. So that's a township responsibility. It's not open space. We may have ended up with this property because of how things took place some years ago, but
It wasn't. I don't want to open up old sore wounds here, but Bert, you're absolutely right. This property wasn't something that we sought; it was something that we got. And I would, based on what I've heard here tonight, and I've gone through this report a couple of times in the past, and from what I've heard here, I think what we should do is leave well enough alone.
Yeah, back off.
For a while, at least, unless the township feels that they have a responsibility to do some additional environmental testing on that land. Because even though it is open space, the township has the ultimate, in this case, responsibility to ensure that that area does not, in of itself, do additional damage to the environment. So, and I think everybody on this committee agrees that it's a beautiful area, but it's got so many issues in terms of environmental dangers that if we do anything in that area, we would be certainly opening ourselves up to a litigation at the least.
Let me ask this. It is an open space area. Do we as a committee have a responsibility to make the board aware of our concerns that we have property that cannot be used in the normal concept of open space?
I think we do. I think we do have the responsibility, but I think they already know the condition of that property.
But we may have some ostriches around.
I think the best thing to do in this case, and maybe I'm addressing this to you, Carl, is to bring this issue to the township board and say that we are concerned about this piece of property from an environmental point of view. And do we need to take an additional series of samples?
At this point, I think that Dale's point about the $5,000 due care would be a very responsible thing for this commission to make.
Is it redundant to this report?
You think it's our initiative to do that? Is that what I just heard?
I think we should make it known to the township board that they have a piece of property there that Dale has made a recommendation, and let's follow up with it.
Right.
I don't believe that ignoring a problem makes it any better. I think that a big problem becomes even worse if you do nothing with it. They're certainly aware of it. They're certainly on notice of it if you've got a 2006 study. Very clear to me that something needs to be done. The township manager has said spend money for a formal due care plan, and I think that's something that I would recommend the township board do. And that should be coming out of general fund, certainly not out of open space. I am unaware of any funds that have been dedicated in the open space millage for such a plan. And there was acquisition money, there's maintenance money, but when you start talking about environmental issues, that is way above and beyond, ladies and gentlemen, what we have. It is a number that can be astronomical.
So what you're saying, recommending, is that we make this issue, make sure that the township board is aware of this issue.
And I will speak with Dale about that this week. And we have budget sessions coming up in February. So this would be an excellent time to bring that to his attention. We're all on notice of it, and I'll take it to the ostriches if that's okay. I do think that's the best way to proceed. And, Pat, I say that respectfully because, frankly, ignoring a problem doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
And let's see if there's anything there that we need to do. Because sooner or later, if there is a problem there, it becomes a much bigger problem for all of us.
What I'd like to do at this point is call for a motion to do just that. Is there somebody care to word that motion?
I go for it. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I move that we meet and speak with Dale Ream about the issues and concerns of the Albemarle Meadows plan and recommend that the township board be requested to consider doing a formal due care plan to be budgeted out of the general fund. Does that work?
I would support that.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Carl?
Okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. It's a shame that we have to do this, but, it's a beautiful area, but I think, quite frankly, to be honest with you, I think we're doing the right thing here.
The thing is, that report has been floating around for so long.
It has.
And we've been having ostriches, and it's not a good thing.
I would say that it is necessary to be proactive. So before we go down, no pun intended, one trail or the other, we need to know what's available there. And we know certainly there is a problem right now. We have a study that confirms that there's a problem. So let's do the right thing, recommend to the township board that they proceed in that manner. I think it's the prudent thing to do.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for their input, and Darryl.
I would like to thank Darryl for pursuing on this, because had he not, it would have continued to sit there with no action.
Through your efforts for bringing this issue to a head. Appreciate your work, Darryl. Okay, the next item, and this will be, is the review of an observation deck on the wildlife sanctuary. And to kind of summarize, recently the Growth Seal Nature and Land Conservancy generously offered the donation of an observation deck to be placed at an area on the open space properties, and we observed the deck, looked at it, and then took a trip down the wildlife sanctuary trail to find a suitable place in which a deck might be installed. And that's where it stands right now. We haven't really decided whether we're going to do it or not do it, so I'd like to open it up for comments, additional information, or what have you.
I also met with Dale Ream about this. We looked at the management plan, the old one that is outdated and needs to be revised, that it would not stop us from doing such an activity. Once again, though, we get back to, we would have to look at liability, we would have to look at total cost, because our funds are shrinking, and at this point there's no way to replenish them. And I think we also need to look in the DNR rules and regulations for soft trails, to make sure that if we put in hard steps to get to the observation deck, we do not get ourselves out of the definition of a soft trail and fall into different requirements such as handicap accessible, etc. So I recommend that we put more study into this and come back, say, in the April meeting with some answers.
As far as answers, as far as questions is concerned, question number one, where would we put it on the wildlife sanctuary trail? Question number two, how much would it cost to pick up that observation deck and then install it or place it on an area by the wildlife sanctuary? And what I mean install, you would have to install it in such a manner that it is safe to use. In other words, you wouldn't want to have a group of volunteers put it in. It has to be put in by professional people. That would cost money. The third question comes up with, of course, liability. Are we opening ourselves up to future liability? Every time you do something, you're going to open yourself up, okay? But the thing of it is the risk, the liability risk, such that it would maybe preclude us from doing it. Thirdly, from a public safety point of view, would this be another area which would be susceptible to vandalism? Another area which would be susceptible to unsavory behavior? Is this something that the police department would have to contend with? And I think when we study this thing, if we want to study it, these are the issues that we would have that has to be considered. So having said this, we can put it on the April agenda for a general discussion, and hopefully at that point in time, maybe get some directional numbers as far as cost is concerned, directional input from the Public Safety Department before we proceed with a formal request for quote on installing that observation deck.
So if I have a question, is this meeting the best venue at this time, or should we have a study session and then come back with the findings of the study session for general discussion? Because we need that. If we do it in a general meeting, then would we have these individuals come and give the input then at the meeting?
Oh, yes. In other words, what I mean by get these questions answered, get the questions that I outlined, get them answered before we bring it back maybe to an April meeting.
Okay, that's what I was asking for clarification.
I don't know whether you need a study session or just somebody
to get the answers.
Or just somebody to get the answers.
Right,
okay?
Gotcha.
All right. So who would want to take this on?
Probably me.
I can ask some of these questions to the Groseal Nature Land Conservancy about how we went about getting the Sunrise Park, the steps there and everything. I mean, we probably hashed out most of these issues already with the township.
Okay.
So I can get some of that. It's not going to be...
So can we work together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Bert and Pat.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think I'd like to maybe start down at the end of the table here. Lenny or Leah, anything else?
Yeah, I regret that I didn't recognize a number of people who volunteered to do a lot of work around the Centennial Farm Recreation Building, like put in new sliding doors and windows and et cetera. That's Ed Kastroff, Jim Gatt, Charlie Campo. They all donated money, time, cement, et cetera, to bring that up and make it a more pleasant and safer place to be. And then on top of that, Allison Gatt and Catherine Kastroff have been longtime volunteers at the animal shelter, and they deserve to have some public recognition for all the work. And I regret that that was near the end of the meeting and I didn't add it to my notes. So thank you.
Any comments? Any other comments?
I'm doing some soul searching actually on, this space that Daryl was talking about against acquisition of new space when there's such a great space down there. So it's very complicated. So I need to do some soul searching on it and think through that process. It's not an easy task at hand.
Oh, okay.
So that's just where my head's at right now.
I'd like to break precedence here and put you on the spot. As far as the website is concerned.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Okay.
I think it's all set, but I haven't had a chance to look at it and follow up.
Okay. Thanks, Lenny.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Are you good? Okay.
You don't want to pipe in on how complicated the situation is?
Okay. I have nothing to say, nothing more. Bert?
I forgot to mention that the high school photo contest for the Groseal Nature Land Conservancy is ongoing. Deadline is in May, so high school students are invited to go to our website and look for the categories and how to submit your photos.
Patricia?
Do you want to know about my meeting with the police chief?
Absolutely.
All right. First off, I've never had an opportunity to meet our police chief before. I was very impressed that he has an open door policy. When I called, I thought I might be put on a waiting list and maybe a week or two later be able to meet with him. And he said, come on over. So Unfortunately, the door was opened twice before I was able to get in. That's how popular he is. But he was very disturbed to hear that we had had vandalism. He was also disturbed to hear that I had not reported it, because if they don't hear about it, they really can't address it. But we did discuss the amount of vandalism on the island, the type of vandalism on the island, and approaches that we could use on the trails that would not be vandal-proof, but that would actually probably make them not want to bother with them. For example, the sign that we put in about the history of the rock was on a nice little substantial but thin post. If we had put it on a stump and screwed the information into the stump that was then buried in the ground, we would still probably have our little history of the glacial rock. So we talked about several ways to be able to add our educational signs to the path. That made a lot of sense to me. We talked about ways that if vandalism should increase, that the police department would assist us, even if it meant putting up cameras. He agreed that we should not cease to do things to enhance the trails for the residents, but to be wiser in the way that we do it. I asked him if we could have something on GI Connect called Police Brief or something of that nature that would let residents know what's going on the island, so that if they were planning some other group to have an activity, they would be aware of being wiser in what they do. And darn it, they had just discussed it at one of their meetings, and he showed me the minutes on it. So, as I say, I was very pleased with my meeting with him. And I think if we need anything from them, they'll be more than accommodating to work with us.
I think one of the key things that you said, and that of course that Joe said, is that we don't want to let the fear of vandalism preclude us from doing good things in our open spaces. And there's the fear that, well, somebody might destroy it, so we won't do it. We will proceed, to serve the residents of Grosse Ile and to enhance as much as possible our trail system.
Right.
Anything else, Pat?
Nope, I'm
Thank
done.
you very much for that. Woody?
Just next month about what date we want to go with dump the junk.
Okay.
Sure we don't have the railroad tie routine.
You want a calendar?
Oh, I'd like to pick a date that they have the other one that comes up, the disposal ones they usually has in Taylor or someplace that we can dump disposable stuff that we can't do.
Okay.
And I'd rather have them a week after, so when the people come, they'll say, oh, or we could say, it's next week, rather than it was last week.
Okay. Well, let's do this then. At the next meeting, Woody, if you could get a hold.
Find out where, if there is one coming up, we'll plan in front of it.
Okay. Well, I think Donna Deppa would be a good source to get that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can find out.
Get a hold of Donna and work your way around that date, and I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, because no sense of shooting our feet.
No. Have it, let's
We've
say.
done that in the past, where they'd come and say, when is it? Well, it was last week. Well, No good that
We'll
way.
have it a week before one of the other
Right.
communities have their hazardous waste. That's an excellent idea. Okay, I think we've discussed a lot of items tonight.
Cliff, if I could follow up with one thing.
Yes.
Actually, a couple of things with what Pat had to say. Chief Porcerelli grew up on this island, graduated from the schools. He's lived here, as I understand it, his entire life. If anybody here has any concerns about vandalism or anything else, I encourage you to make a phone call, stop in. The only danger is if you stop in, he might be at a meeting someplace else, down here, a manager's meeting or a chief's meeting or a 33rd District Court meeting. Stop in, and if you have any ideas, any questions, visit with him. I think you will find that he is very creative. He has been our chief for almost 8 years now. He offers solutions to problems that many of us would just look at and step back and think, wow, where did that idea come from? That's a great idea. As far as the cameras and things like that, certainly is something that could be done. Do you want to be in that business? I think it's a question of degree. How much
That would
damage,
be last ditch. Yeah.
how much damage is being done, if any? I have found in the last 2 weeks, I have walked the Manchester Woods, both with a neighbor and with our daughter, and I keep running into people on that. That trail is really well used, and half a dozen people each time, and that is remarkable. That may go somewhat towards policing as well, because people, at least during the winter, aren't as likely to be out there, but in the summertime, if you have people out there walking around, a lot of this vandalism occurs either at night and certainly when nobody else is around. But Chief Porcerelli has been very, very proactive. We have a new commission member on the police commission, Mike Jarecki, who has a strong background with internet and sales and advertising, and we're hoping that that's going to make a difference where we can put items out there on the web so that people can see what's going on. And frankly, if there is a problem with vandalism, please take it up with the chief. Let him know. He's very proactive and very responsive.
Along with that, and I'd like to maybe talk to the people that are at home watching this on TV, if you see an instance of vandalism on any of the trails or any inappropriate behavior in the open spaces as you're walking through them, call the police department immediately. And then if you want to call one of us or call me, you can. But make your first call if you see something that of gross vandalism or any other damage of any kind. Call the police department and let them know. Thank you.
And that telephone number is 734-676-7100.
Anything else? Is there a motion on the floor?
Well, just real quick, I just looked up the Wayne County Household Hazardous Waste Collection Days, just so people can be aware of them. The first one will be in Romulus. They're all on Saturdays. Romulus, April 22nd. Dearborn, June 10th. Westland, August 12th. And Taylor, October 7th.
Okay, why don't you get that to Woody, and then he can...
What's the one in May?
Not in May, it's April.
April, and that's where?
That's in Romulus. And that's on Earth Day.
And when's Westland?
So it's Romulus, April 22nd.
Yeah.
Dearborn, June 10th. Westland, August 12th. And Taylor, October 7th.
Well, there's not going to be anybody really close to us then. If we're going to be doing it in May.
Because it's June,
Well, there's one in June. so
April.
let's
There's
say-
one in
June 10th.
April, June 10th.
Okay, so we can,
August
we
12th,
can do it in May,
October
and they can
7th.
say,
Right. If we did it towards the end of May, then it would be coming up
right.
in June.
And then the other one is in when? October?
October 7th and Taylor.
I don't know, do you think that'd be too early,
Well, we'll see.
the other one?
I think it's a good idea to have it, to have ours before
Right.
the
Yeah.
hazardous waste in the other communities.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So be it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for coming, folks, appreciate it.